It is a joy to be here, and we have thoroughly enjoyed your wonderful hospitality in this great country. It has just been a blast. I wish that you would keep Faith for Today and our ministry in your prayers. Faith for Today is the oldest religious broadcast in the world. It is for television broadcast in the world. It is. We celebrated 58 years this past May. I haven't been with them all of those 58 years. I'm not quite 58 years old, so but they certainly predate me. But William and Virginia Fagel were the pioneers in television for Faith for Today, and Faith for Today has always been devoted to meeting the needs of secular men and women, and that is the mainstay of our programming. And we produce not just a program that you see on Hope Channel, which is the church program, but also Lifestyle Magazine. And we're about to shoot the first week in September 32 more programs, and we're going to do that in 4 days. So we'll shoot 8 programs a day for 4 days, and then they'll put us in a nursing home or something of that nature. So keep us in your prayers, if you would please, because Faith for Today has a ministry to the wider world, and we do get email from all over the place, from all over the world. First, we'd like to introduce to you our family, since we're talking about marriage and family.
These are our children. On the right, you see Allison. Allison is our older daughter. She's a teacher. She's been living in Oklahoma, which is a little north of Texas, for the last 5 years. But we're very excited right now because she has just moved back to Texas and will be living in Dallas, which is just about 45 minutes from us. So we will have her back close again, and we're excited about that. She's been teaching 7th and 8th graders. And that's a challenge. If any of you are teachers or hang around that preteen age group, but her theory is someone has to love them, and it might as well be me. So that's what she's been doing. Now that she's moved to Dallas, she'll be teaching 3rd and 4th grade, and we're very proud of her because she won the Excellence in Teaching Award for the 5-state region of Seventh-day Adventist schools, and so we're very proud of her.
She's smart like her mama. And right next to her is her little sister, Michael Ann. And Michael Ann she's also a teacher, but she's taken the last 2 years to do some graduate work, and she's just completed a master's degree in counseling, just like her daddy. And she is now working counseling abused, battered women. And which is, you think about, this child grew up in our home with 2 preachers for parents. She can scarcely remember us raising our voice at each other, and she's counseling women who have been sexually, verbally, physically abused. And so some of the stories have caused her to grow up in a hurry. And that young man standing there hanging on to her is her husband, and they have been married now 3 years. And Levi is a teacher, and he's teaching at the same school where Allison is teaching, and he's teaching those 7th and 8th graders this year, so pray for him. But that's our little family, our 2 daughters and our son-in-law, and they all 3 live very close to us, and we're very thrilled about that.
We have so enjoyed being here this week. I told them back at home that it seems like being in Australia is kind of like looking at the world in HD compared to regular television, the high definition, because it just looks so clear and bright and crisp, and the colors are beautiful, and the people have been lovely, and we've just enjoyed it a lot. So we're excited about being with you this weekend. We'd like to know a little bit about who's here. And we always have a variety of folks who've been married a long time, married a short time, not married at all, a lot of singles. So we'd like to find out who we have here tonight. How many married couples do we have here, or married people do we have here tonight?
Very good.
Quite a few. How many single folks? Yay.
All right.
Always good.
Yeah. Widowed? Does that, you want to put that in there? Okay, widowed, single, good.
That's right.
All right.
And I talked to a couple right back here who've been married for 57 almost 57
Wonderful.
years. Is there anybody here
She
that...
must have been 12 when you married her.
That's right. Anybody here that beats that, longer than that?
How many years? 57 and 3/4.
Getting close to 58.
Almost 58.
Anybody above 58 or 57 and 3/4? All right.
All
That's
right.
amazing. How many folks here have been married over 50 years? We got several?
All right, good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Who do we have that's been married, say, under 10 years? All right.
Good, good.
Good. Under 5? All
Oh,
right.
look at that.
Still going. It's the same people. How about 4, under 4?
4.
All
Look
right.
at there.
So we dropped out here. You guys have been married about 5 years? Yeah.
4.5. Okay.
Under 3? Oh, I got
Oh,
newlyweds
wow.
up here. And back there, under 2? All right.
Under 1.
Less than 1?
Oh, we got the
Back
champions
row.
right back there.
Yeah, and they're
The
sitting in the
newbies.
back. Yeah.
How long for you guys?
Oh, 4
Wow. The ink's hardly dry on the license.
weeks.
Well, you know what? We're glad you're here. You're smart to be here. It's good. It's good to get some instruction early on and then frequently throughout. And, should the Lord delay His coming and you have health, you're going to be among these who are 57 and 3/4 years as well.
That's right.
We're confident.
That's right.
God wants something special for your marriage. He wants your marriage to be something that has no regrets. I used to work as a hospital chaplain, and I got called to the hospital late one night because a man was about to die. And I went to the intensive care unit, and there I found his wife and daughter standing with him. And it was obvious that he was in the last stages of life. And so I began to hold a conversation with him, and we had prayer for the man. And then I asked the woman how long they had been married, and she said they had been married for 57 years. 57 years. They had met, this was some years ago, they had met during the Great Depression, and he was a school teacher, and she was a nurse. And she had gone to a Christmas program where her niece was in school and had a part in the program, and while there, she met her niece's teacher, who was this dashing young man. And they struck up a friendship immediately that evening. And that evening after the program, he offered to walk her home. And so they walked home, and she says, we sat on a culvert and looked at the moon. And she said, we just went on from there. Eventually, the man passed away, and we had a prayer. And we took all the vital information and the funeral home and so forth. But it was obvious it was just difficult for her to leave. I said, after all these years, it's tough for you to walk away, isn't it? Yes, it is, she said. So I sent the daughter for the car. I'll bring your mother out. You go get the car and bring it around, and I'll bring her out. And so we stood there a while longer, and finally I said, it's probably time to go meet your daughter. She said, yes. I said, it's tough, isn't it? Yes, she said, maybe we should have fought more. Maybe it would be easier. I said, no, it's been my experience that when they fight more, there are regrets. She said, well, that's one thing for sure. We have no regrets. 57 years, no regrets. That's the kind of marriage I want. How about you?
It's exactly what God has in mind, too. In Matthew 19:6, he says, so they are no longer 2, but 1. And those are Jesus' words. And he spoke those words when some Pharisees had come to him and they had said, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? And Jesus didn't really even answer that directly because he went to the way God sees things. And he said, that's not the question. The question is not, can I get a divorce? What can I get by with? The question is, what is God's ideal? And God's ideal is that the 2 would be 1. Oneness. Is there anything we want more than to have the intimacy of heart with another person in this world and someone else to walk through life with? And that's what God had in mind for us. He said they are no longer 2 but 1, and it's a miracle that he performs within us. a miracle called oneness.
Oneness. And some people wonder about this oneness. How does that happen? What makes that happen? Our friends Willie and Elaine Oliver, when they talk about oneness, they say, yeah, oneness, but which one? Most people think that somehow I have to lose myself or my identity in this other person. That's assimilation. We're not talking about assimilation. We're talking about accommodation, where we have a shared worldview, we have shared goals, a shared vision, shared purpose, as well as a shared life, shared belief, and shared direction. That's the way we find oneness.
You know, we don't do that very well in America. You know, we haven't been very good at learning how to find oneness and
they're much better in Australia.
Keep marriages together. Yeah, I'm just wondering, how's it going in Australia? Not so good?
Not so good.
I don't know if your statistics are like ours, but ours are 35 to 40% of marriages fail. And that's not a very good statistic, not one that we like. And so we're wondering, you know, what are the reasons? What are the barriers to oneness? What is it that keeps us from having that ideal that God has planned for us? And we want to mention a few of those to you tonight before we launch into what you find on your papers there. One of those things is just simply self-protection and fear. You know, we're afraid. The first thing that happened when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit in the garden was that they began to cover themselves, right? They covered themselves in the areas of intimacy and in the areas of their differences. And we tend to still do that. Because if I let you in a little bit too close, then you might not like what you see. You might see the real me, and you might reject me, and that wouldn't be good. And what will we do? And so I keep this wall up here. Barriers to intimacy. We're afraid that, you know, if someone attacks us, then we pretty much put the wall up real quick, because we learn quickly, don't we? If I open myself up to you and I'm rejected, or you attack me, then I'm going to back off, and I'm going to put that barrier up there. So I'm afraid of intimacy, and it happens over and over and over again. It's fear. It is one of the great barriers to intimacy and to oneness.
Another barrier is sin and selfishness, and basically sin by definition is selfishness, is me first. And when we live that way, then of course that is the antithesis of love, because love is unselfishness. Love is giving. Love is sharing and openness and oneness. And so we cannot be selfish and sinful and have a successful marriage. We have to be unselfish and giving and accepting in order to have a successful marriage. But one of the other things I think that prevents us from having the oneness we so desire is a lack of knowledge. And we're going to talk tonight about some things that will help us increase our knowledge of how to have a successful relationship. You know, people don't teach you this stuff. This marriage is kind of on-the-job training. A whole lot like parenting. It's on-the-job training. Parenting's the most guilt-producing thing I've ever done in my life. You know, and we were fairly successful. We have 2 healthy, intelligent adult daughters who still like us. And so, you know, I don't know what else you want. They love God and they like us, but still it was guilt-producing. It's on-the-job training. And so we hope to be able to share with you some things that will increase your knowledge in order to help your marriages function more efficiently.
So do we want to do this little relationship dynamic scale here?
We could do that if you'd like. Okay. Just kind of, if you have a pen, kind of keep a little track of this. We're going to give some questions. Answer them 1, 2, or 3. 1 is almost never, 2 is once in a while, and 3 is frequently. 1, 2, or 3. And if you don't have a pen, you're going to have to keep a mental note. And we'll see how good your math skills are.
We'll check the math skills
because what we're going to do, if you're keeping mental note, the math in this is that you will add the numbers altogether. So in other words, if you answer number 1 for the first one and number 2 for the second, that total so far is 3. Make sense? All right, here we go. First question. Little arguments escalate into ugly fights with accusations, criticisms, name-calling, or bringing up past hurts. Does that happen almost never? 1. Does it happen once in a while? 2, does it happen frequently? Number 3. 1, 2, or 3. Just answer first thing that comes to your mind, 1, 2, or 3.
And here it is again. Little arguments escalate into ugly fights with accusations, criticisms, name-calling, or bringing up past hurts.
1, 2, or 3. Almost never 1, 2, once in a while, 3 frequently. The next question is, my partner criticizes or belittles my opinions, feelings, or desires. My partner criticizes or belittles my opinions, feelings, or desires. 1, 2, or 3. Almost never, once in a while, or frequently is 3. Next question. My partner seems to view my words or actions more negatively than I mean them to be. My partner seems to view my words or actions more negatively than I mean them to be. 1, 2, or 3. Never, once in a while, number 2, or 3, frequently. The next question. When we have a problem to solve, it is like we are on opposite teams. When we have a problem to solve, it is like we are on opposite teams. 1, almost never. 2, once in a while. 3, frequently. I hold back from telling my partner what I really think and feel. I hold back from telling my partner what I really think and feel. Does that happen almost never? 1. 2, does it happen once in a while? Or 3, does it happen frequently? I think seriously about what it would be like to date or marry someone else. I think seriously. Don't let your partner see this one, you know. I think seriously about what it would be like to date or marry someone else. 1, 2, or 3. Never?
These actually are to be done separately.
Never, once in a while, or frequently. I feel lonely in this relationship. 1, 2, or 3. 1, 2, or 3. Never, once in a while, frequently. I feel lonely in this relationship. And the final question. When we argue, one of us withdraws, that is, doesn't want to talk about it anymore, or leaves the scene. When we argue, one of us withdraws, that is, doesn't want to talk about it anymore, or leaves the scene. 1, 2, or 3. And then one kind of bonus question, which doesn't count in the scoring, and that is, who tends to withdraw more when there's an argument? The male, the female, both equally, or neither? All right, that's just a little bonus there. Now, what you need to do is take those numbers, the numbers of all your answers. If you answered number 1 for the first one, number 2 for the second one, and number 3 for the third one, you add those 3 together, that would be 6, right? Add all the total of all your scores, and you will get a grand total.
Now, while you're totaling that up, we'll talk a little bit.
A little math.
All of these have to do with communication patterns, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And as you get this score, kind of carry it with you and be thinking about it as we look at these communication patterns tonight and see if you recognize some of these things in what we talk about and recognize some of the solutions to these things if they exist for you.
All right, now that you've done the math, if you scored between 8 and 12, and you couldn't have if you've got a score fewer than 8, you skipped a question. There were 8 questions. You had to answer 1 to at least all of them. So 8 to 12, then we're going to give you a green light for right now, because that means that your relationship is probably in pretty good shape right now, that the communication patterns are pretty positive. If you score between 13 and 17, we're giving you a yellow light. That means caution. It's not time to panic, but there may be trouble ahead, because you've got some areas that could use some improving. That is 13 to 17. If you scored 18 or above, we're telling you it's time to stop, to take a deep look at your relationship, because there's some issues that need to be fixed before you go on. That makes sense to you? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands for scores. But basically, that just tells you that there may be some problems with your communication patterns, and we're going to take a look at those right now.
Now, as you noticed at the top of the sheet that you got, if you hopefully you did get that, it says danger signs, and we're going to talk about negative communication patterns. Now, the question comes, why would you come to a marriage seminar and first thing you do is talk about negative stuff? Why not come and learn about, what are the good things I can do? What are some positive habits I can form?
We'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. But this is very important because the University of Denver, in Denver, Colorado, did a study that lasted about 20 years. It was a long-term study, and the purpose of the study was to look at marriage and discover some of the things that happen in good marriages, so that hopefully if we could just learn about marriage and find out what makes marriages succeed, that we could teach people those skills. And they could, we could improve things in America and maybe around the world as far as marriage goes. Well, what they discovered was kind of interesting, because as they looked at marriages for a 20-year period, they found that marriages that succeed for a variety of different reasons, and they don't all look the same. And they couldn't really come up with anything that says, if you do this, you'll succeed in marriage. But on the flip side, with marriages that failed, they found some very strong common denominators. And those strong common denominators were negative patterns of communication. When you think about it, everything that you know about your spouse comes because of something they have communicated to you. Everything I know about Mike Tucker comes because he has communicated it to me either verbally or by body language or by facial expression or by tone of voice. One way or another, he has communicated what he feels to me. And it makes a huge difference in how I respond back to him. So communication is key, and it's essential. And there are certain patterns of communicating that are negative ways of communicating that impact your marriage in a very negative way. In fact, they found them to be the strongest predictors for failed marriage. So if you find these things in your marriage, what it says is your marriage may be at risk, or you may be looking for trouble down the line, or you may even be looking at eventual divorce if these things continue. The other thing that was interesting is that they found that these patterns of communication are generational. In other words, we pass them along to our children. Now, if a negative communication pattern in my marriage says that I may be headed for divorce, is that something I want to pass on to my children? I don't want my children to have that kind of pattern and possibly end their marriages in divorce. So it's worth taking a look at, and that's why we look at it first, because this has such powerful implications for your marriage and for the success or failure of your marriage.
The other good thing about this is that all of these factors are dynamic. When you look at marriage factors, those that predict divorce, some are static, things that you cannot change, and some are dynamic. The things that are dynamic are the things we really need to work on, because if we can change them, then we can make some differences in our marriage. In fact, by removing one of these negative patterns of communication in your marriage, you do more to ensure the long-term stability of your marriage than adding 5 positive things. Removing one negative does more than adding 5 positive things. Why? Because even if you're buying her flowers but you're speaking to her in a negative way, she's got mixed messages coming from you. And the flowers seem disingenuous because of the ugly way you're talking to her. And when she has that negative communication, the flowers don't mean anything at all. Throw the flowers away. Just speak in a positive way towards me, and you can live without the flowers. We'll be just fine. But if you take away the negative and then give the flowers, then the flowers are special, right? Then the flowers are special because we don't get the mixed messages. Now let's take a look at these 4 negative communication patterns. We're going to start with one that is entitled escalation. Escalation is when an argument begins with a small issue but increases in intensity and negativity with each partner upping the ante. It can start off very small and end up with something very big. It can start off with, I leave my socks on the floor, and end up with, I'm leaving you. And how I got from point A to point B, no one really knows, but it goes there. It starts off small and ends up in point B with, I'm leaving you. And so it might look something like this.
Honey, I told the youth group we would speak for them this Friday night because we said we would do some stuff for the youth group.
Pardon me? This Friday night?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't check with my calendar. I have an appointment this Friday night.
You told me to check with the youth group and tell them that we'd be involved with them.
Well, yes, involved, but I didn't give you a date when we could be involved. I have a calendar. I have issues. I've got things I've got to do.
Oh, very important.
Well, hello. Yes, I do. I work for a living. Forgive me. Excuse me for working
And
for a
I
living.
don't work for a living?
Well, I'm sure you must.
Look, you tell me to do something, and then you don't want me to do it.
I want you to do it, but I want you to check with me first. Why don't you
I
ever
thought
check with me?
checking with me was when
I
you
don't
said,
know.
do this.
Well, yeah, but not for specifics. I need a date. Hello? I don't know why I stay around with you.
Oh, I'm not real sure either.
I'm out of here. You like that?
Yuck.
I don't even like doing that. When we do this, we've got some people in our church who say, you guys really stink at fighting. Come to our house, we'll show you a good fight. You got no idea. And so, but truthfully, it starts off with something small and ends up building to something big. And it started off with a very small thing. And then all of a sudden, we can go to name calling. We can shout at each other.
And as soon as one person says something ugly, then it's like, well, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you more.
That's right.
So I find something a little bit harder to say.
A little more negative, and we just go back and forth. And who wins? No one wins.
Nobody wins.
And sometimes you'll say things in the heat of battle, and your partner will later say, you must have really meant that because you said it when you were really emotional. Research shows that we don't mean the things that we say in the heat of battle, that we will lose control, we'll say something stupid. That's what the research shows. However, whether you mean it or not, if you say it, it leaves a mark. It leaves a wound and eventually a scar. And so it's better not to say it. Successful couples exit this cycle early. In fact, when successful couples, if you know that you have a tendency to escalate, then the agreement is the first time one of us recognizes that escalation is occurring, that person will soften their tone and become conciliatory. The other person will recognize the softened tone and the conciliatory nature and will match the tone and say, we need to talk about this, but not right now that we're both emotional. Let's set an appointment. Now, we're going to talk to you about how to set the appointment and what to do with that appointment later. But the best way to interrupt escalation is to recognize we do this, and the first time we feel it escalating, we're going to say a timeout. We're going to soften our tone, become conciliatory. We're going to match that tone and set an appointment to deal with the issue later in a way that does not allow us to escalate. Make sense?
Key to this is both of you, when you're in a good moment, being able to discuss it and say, this is something we do.
Right.
And we have to have a plan. Because when you're in the heat of the moment and somebody says, let's stop now.
That's not going to work.
It just makes the other person more angry.
When you're shouting, let's stop.
Because then it's, holier than thou, right?
Get out of here.
Yeah. So it has to be an agreed upon thing, and there has to be some kind of, almost a cue that you've agreed upon ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that suddenly it's going to feel better and everybody's going to be happy.
You're still going to be ticked. But you don't allow the emotions to escalate to the point where you hurt each other. You set an appointment, and then you deal with the issue in a more sensible way later at the appointment. Those appointments, by the way, should be set within the next 24 hours, almost always. They should be set within the next 24 hours, and then we'll give you tools for what to do during that appointment so that you can do this, you can find a solution without killing each other, which is always preferable because it helps the marriage and keeps you out of jail. So that's escalation.
Number 2, the second pattern is invalidation. And invalidation is a pattern where one partner either subtly or more obviously, more directly puts down the thoughts, the feelings, or the character of the other person. Now, this one has a wide range. It's not as easily defined as escalation is, because invalidation can be very, very subtle. Invalidation can even be unintentional, or it can be very direct and caustic. It can be name-calling. You're such a loser. You never do anything right. The you statements and you always and you never. Or it can be very subtle, where, it's all right, just cheer up. If Mike comes home, he's upset over something that happened at work, and I say, it's all right, you'll feel better later. And now I haven't listened to him, I haven't heard what he was thinking or feeling. I'm just trying to
She placated
make him feel
me,
better.
and that means I was invalidated. The underlying message to that activity is, your feelings don't matter. You're overreacting, you're silly, your feelings don't matter. And that's an invalidation, isn't it? Or it may look something like this. Sweetheart, today I was driving my car, and I really thought I was paying attention to the speed limit, but the officer pulled me over and wrote me a citation. And I just felt awful about this because I'm...
You never learn, do you? How many tickets have you had?
Well, I don't know. I thought I'd learned because I really thought I wasn't speeding. I was really paying very close attention.
Well, let me tell you something.
What?
People who don't speed don't get speeding tickets. That's just the way it works.
Well, I really thought I wasn't speeding, but you understand what this is? All right, so already she's just attacked me. She said, you're basically a loser. That's what this is.
You can never learn. Your intelligence is in question here.
That's a more direct, overt means of doing this, all right? But it can be more subtle as well. It can even be when you're trying to fix something or make someone feel better, such as, how about, did you go to Weight Watchers today, dear?
Yes, I went to Weight Watchers today.
Oh, well, good. How'd it go for you?
Well, I'm really discouraged because I go
Really?
and I try and, I try to I'll count all the little points and do all the right things, and I get there and I haven't lost a thing, or maybe a quarter of a pound.
Oh,
Big deal.
don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Yeah, you're overreacting. It's not.
No, I really hate this. I get so tired of fighting it all the time.
Yeah, just don't worry about it. In fact, I don't like skinny women.
That was helpful, wasn't it? It can even be something like this. We go out to eat with friends, and I think of a story. I'm like, oh, you guys, you won't believe what happened last week when we went to the mall. It was so funny. It was last Wednesday.
No, it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday, dear. It was Tuesday. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was Tuesday.
Yeah.
So we got out of the car and we're walking in, and we see these people.
Well, you never tell this right, but what happened is that we were walking in the.
And suddenly she gets quiet. Why? She's been invalidated because she can't tell the story right. He has to tell it. He has to talk over her. Or vice versa. Mm-hmm. She has to talk over him. And how often that happens, ladies. We're pretty sure that we know better than the guys do, and they don't have good memories, and they can't, I know this story. I get the details right, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Another time this happens is when she comes home with a problem, and she wants to tell you the story, and you want to fix it. And what she was looking for was your empathy, not your solution. And you wanted to fix it. Men are kind of bottom line creatures. We want to fix it. And you and I can have lunch together, gentlemen, and I could share with you a problem. And you could say, Mike, what you need to do is, and I'd go away thinking, this guy's all right. He listened to me. He even had a solution for my problem. I like him. You go home, your wife comes with the very same problem. And you'll say, I know what to do. This works so good with Mike. Sweetheart, what you need to do is, and she'll say, you never listened to me. What happened? You've invalidated her because she wanted your empathy. Women bond by shared emotion, and that's why they take so long to tell the story, guys. So many details, you're thinking, is there a point to the story? Yes, there is. She wants to share the details with you so you can empathize with her, so you can be there with her emotionally. And when you can bond with her emotionally and identify with her emotion, she feels closer to you. She's not looking for your solution. And to offer the solution is to invalidate her.
Another thing that happens a lot, and ladies, we're a little bit guilty of this, is thinking that men can't think for themselves, especially when it comes to our children.
Careful.
We were several of the ladies at our church and we were all together when our children were little, and the dads were going to do us a favor and give us a ladies' night out, and we were all excited, and they were going to meet us at the church. They were going to pick up the kids and take them, and we were all going to go have our ladies' night and have fun. Well, the guys started getting there one by one, and this one dad came, and he kind of gathers these kids up and all the paraphernalia, and he's headed out the door, and she's giving him instructions all the way as he's walking out. And the last thing, just as the door is about to close, she says, "Don't let him get run over." It's like, oh,
well, I'm
really?
glad you mentioned that one.
Wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, we're going to play in the street, but I guess now.
And, when Dad is expecting, or anyone is expecting to be praised for something that they've done well, and instead they get nitpicking on little details, that's invalidation. There was a couple that we knew where they were engaged. They weren't living together yet. He was living in another state, and she was coming to visit, and he was excited, and he knew that she loved everything just neat and perfectly clean, and so he spent like a week cleaning his apartment and getting it just right, and he was all excited. And she walked in the door, and she says, "Oh, this is a nice apartment. How come the bookcase is messed up?" First thing she saw is he hadn't straightened the books just perfectly to her liking. And he was expecting, wow, you've got it all so nice. And he got, why didn't you do that? So we have to be careful. We have to be careful with our children in this regard. We can invalidate our children very easily. We can invalidate them by never paying attention to them in terms of giving eye contact and stopping what we're doing to listen when they want to tell us something. Now, admittedly, you can't stop every time your 5-year-old says, look, and stop what you're doing. But there do need to be times when you stop, you give them eye contact, you listen to their story, and you respond to it and hear the feelings that go along with it. Because it's very easy to invalidate people without realizing we're doing it.
And of course, the solution to invalidation is validation. We validate by listening, by not fixing, by honoring feelings and opinions, by honoring the character and the person, by not judging, by not criticizing, but by receiving one another openly and honestly and validating one another. That makes sense? Okay. That's invalidation. Now, you ready for the next one? The next one is called negative interpretations. Negative interpretations. This occurs when one partner sees or interprets what the other person says or does more negatively than it was intended. So you say one thing, you're thinking one thing about it, and your partner interprets it much more negatively than what you intended. Now, there's a fair deal of mind reading that has to take place with this. Yeah, you're saying this, but what you really mean is. And, no matter how well you may know him or her, you really can't read their mind. And so it's interpreting those things more negatively. It may be something like this. Dear, Christmas is coming, and I know you've got a lot of cooking to do around the house, and I just worry about all that you've got to do with the family coming in and the cleaning and all. And I know, one of my favorite dishes that you cook is candied yams. And so I'd like to cook those this year for you just to kind of relieve something from you. Would that be all right?
Really? Well, I usually just cook them with the rest of the meal.
Well,
It's
yeah,
all right.
I just was hoping this would be something that would take at least some burden off of you, so I could help and do something for you.
You don't like my candied yams, do you?
Oh, no, that's not it.
No, the more I think about it, sometimes it's like, honey, do them with the marshmallows on top.
Well, yeah, I like
no,
that.
No, do them this time with the brown sugar and the nuts and stuff.
Well, yeah,
you don't like what I do.
Oh, I love what you do. I just like the variety.
No, you're always trying to fix it. That's what's... No.
So how do I win? You see, basically, the only person who can change negative interpretations is the person who's doing the interpreting. If there's very much of this at all in your marriage, it really spells bad times ahead. You must choose to interpret what your mate says more positively. Now, early in our marriage, I did some of this. I tended to interpret things more negatively. You have to understand, though, the way we grew up. If you've ever watched that old American 50s sitcom, Father Knows Best, the rather idyllic Americana home where everybody adores Dad, and Dad is the fount of all wisdom, and all problems are pretty well solved by Dad within 30 minutes. That's where she grew up. That was her home. Everybody adored their father, only it was better than Father Knows Best because God was there. It was a wonderful setting, almost idyllic. I, on the other hand, grew up in The Simpsons. We put the fun back in dysfunctional. And so when we got together, it was The Simpsons meets Father Knows Best with God, it just was not working too well. And I did some negative interpretations. And I remember Gayle did something or said something once that hurt me. And I told her about it. And she apologized. And I told her about it again. And she apologized again. I told her about it again. And about the fourth time in, she said, "You act as though I did this on purpose." Remember, where I grew up versus where she grew up. And so my response was, "Yeah?" She said, "All right, here's the deal. I want you to understand this. I will never intentionally hurt you. That's my pledge. I may hurt you because I'll go brain dead. I may hurt you because I'll forget. I may hurt you because I don't understand, but I will never do it intentionally," which was a brand new thought to me. So we've made this kind of the mantra of our marriage. Whenever something happens between the two of us, we can stop and say, "Wait a minute. My spouse would never intentionally hurt me. If I'm hurt, it's because they don't understand, or they've forgotten, or I've misinterpreted something. And as soon as I explain it to her, she'll give me the correct interpretation, or she'll change what she's doing, or she'll apologize, whatever is necessary in order to make this work." We've been married for 32 and a half years, and she has never intentionally hurt me in all of those years. I know that's true.
You know, the reason that works is, the only way it works is if both of you make that commitment that you will not intentionally hurt the other one. And the truth is, we all know pretty much what buttons to push on the other person if we want to, don't we? We know the things that get to them, and we can do it and say, "Oh no, that's not what I meant." So, that we've got to be careful that we make this commitment that we will never intentionally hurt our spouse. And what that does is it creates a world of freedom, because it creates one safe place in the world. You're not going to find a safe place out there somewhere. It's not going to be at work. It's not going to be with other people. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not even in the church. But there ought to be a safe place that you can be in your home, and know that there you will never be intentionally hurt by your spouse. Now, there'll be things that happen, like Mike said.
Of course, that has happened, but
humans.
Never intentional.
But if I know that he never intentionally did something to me, then I can back up and I can say, "All right, what is going on here? There's something else behind this. There's some other problem," and then we can figure it out and work it out.
And again, it only becomes a safe place if both of you make it a safe place. And then the only way to stop the negative interpretation is to choose to interpret things positively. Take a deep breath and say, "All right, is there more than one way to interpret this?" Marriages don't get in trouble if you mind read positive things. The problem is that we rarely do that. If we're going to mind read, we mind read something negative. They don't get in trouble by mind reading positive things. And so if you will make it your habit to choose to interpret something more positively rather than negatively, and if the two of you will make your home a safe place, then you can avoid the negative interpretations. You can remove that, so that negative undercurrent does not exist in your marriage.
All right, there's one more. It's called.
Let's talk about something else now, shall we? Let's do something.
Well,
fun.
there's one more.
No, I want to do something fun. Let's talk about something fun.
No, this one's called avoidance.
You know, if we're going to talk about this, I'm leaving. I'm just out of here. I'm sorry. I'm gone.
No, you have to stay. Avoidance and withdrawal. Avoidance and withdrawal is when one partner fails to deal with the difficult issues by avoiding the discussion or withdrawing altogether. Okay, we're going to talk about the avoidance and withdrawal first before we go to that last part. But a withdrawer is someone that when a heated topic or a tough topic comes up, an issue that they don't want to discuss, they leave the room, absent themselves, like Mike wanted to do, or they find some other way to shut down that conversation. And it can be by just clamming up, just getting quiet. I'm not talking. And that's what I tend to do. You know, if there's a topic that's difficult for us, I just get real quiet. It's not a good thing.
The lips get very thin.
Yeah.
And white.
And white.
Thin and white.
Can't help it. No, I can't help it, can I?
Yeah.
Another way to withdraw is something you might not recognizes withdrawal, and that is when someone just explodes with anger. If you have a temper outburst, that's really loud and is not leaving the room, but it does shut down the conversation, doesn't it? Because no one can speak to you then because you've blown up. So withdrawing is a really difficult thing. And also changing the subject. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of ways to withdraw. Agreeing too quickly. You're right. I'm sorry. I want to do it again. Let's just forget about it. And that's not really making it better, is it? That's simply closing off the conversation. Now, the avoider is even more adept because the avoider seems to have this sixth sense that tells them when something uncomfortable is going to come up, and they just avoid it altogether. They find ways to never let the topic come up. They'll stay late at work so that hopefully, by the time I get home, she's asleep, we don't have to talk about it. Or they will find a variety of ways to avoid it. Maybe they come home. Hey, let's get the kids to go out to eat, all right? Yeah, let's go do something fun. And be sure that you've got plenty of people around so that the topic can't come up. This is a very, very dangerous thing for marriage. And the reason is that when we have difficult issues that we never discuss, they tend to just be stacked up. And they pile up higher and higher and higher between us until there's this wall between us. And pretty soon it's too daunting. You don't know how to get around it or over it or through it. And so you just stay separated. And you will be separated either in the same house, still married, or actually separated and divorced. Because it is a separating thing when you never deal with the little issues of life or even the big issues. Whatever they turn big if they're not dealt with while they're small. So avoidance and withdrawal is one of the most dangerous things that we can have. Now, in most marriages, you will find someone who tends to be more of a pursuer, and someone who tends to be more of an avoider or withdrawer. And sometimes those roles can change depending on the subject. But the pursuer is wanting to find a way to reconcile, to find an answer to this. There we go. They're seeking intimacy by resolved conflict. The avoider is usually seeking peace. They're not avoiding you or withdrawing from you. They are seeking peace. Why do you always want to fight? Why can't we just get along? And the pursuer is, why can't we settle this? We never talk about anything. It's always there, but we never deal with it. And so they keep pursuing. The avoider and withdrawer feels trapped, and so they keep running, and you keep chasing each other all the time. Both of you panicked. The pursuer panicked because we're not dealing with issues. The avoider or withdrawer because you're trying to trap me and you're trying to pick a fight. And so you keep running. So what's the solution? So the solution is, number one, you agree that this is what we do. We have the tendency to avoid and withdraw. And one is the pursuer. So basically what you say is the pursuer will pursue less, the avoider will avoid less, and we will set an appointment to deal with issues. One of the reasons that avoiders and withdrawers try to avoid or withdraw is because they feel trapped. So when it's time for the pursuer to bring up an issue, they will do it something like, sweetheart, I'd like to talk to you about X. When's a good time? And having talked about this beforehand, I know that means that we need a time within the next 24 hours or so. Right. And so I say, all right, I think tomorrow afternoon the kids are going to be at piano lessons around 4. Can you do that? 4 o'clock, it works for me. I can get off. I'll be here at 4. Now, the reason that something like that is good for me is because, as I told you, I tend to get quiet. I am the withdrawer, in certain situations anyway. And the part of the reason for that is because Mike is very quick on his feet. When he's thinking, he can come up with an answer just like that. And I'm not that way. It takes me longer to think it through. And if we just, if I am blindsided by some kind of an argument or a discussion, then I feel like he can just, wave his sword a few times and cut me down, and I'm in a heap on the floor, and and he has won. But really, neither of us has won if that happens, right? So it's better for me if I can stop, think about it, think about what's going on, think about how I really feel about this situation, and then have the conversation.
She tends to think more thoroughly than I, because she will ruminate over it longer than I will, and if I give her time, I'm in trouble. But we don't want to hurt each other, and so the agreement is that we're going to make an appointment. We'll take the time. We'll talk about this. We'll do it with a set of skills that will keep us from avoiding or withdrawing, keep us from escalating or from interpreting things negatively or invalidating each other, and actually help us to find a solution. Now, before we go on, who in here tends to be an avoider or withdrawer? Why don't you fess up? Let's see your hands if you tend to avoid or withdraw. We got one back here. In your relationship, okay. Who tends to be the pursuer? Do you have any pursuers here? We got pursuers right here.
Yeah,
all right.
There's an admission over there.
Yeah, there's an admission, yeah. It wasn't
we
confession time.
We all have to admit
but still.
whichever one we are.
And the rest of you are just sitting on your hands because you're avoiding answering, aren't you? Yeah, I busted all of you. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because several years ago when we first started doing these presentations, what we saw almost always is that the women would be the pursuers and the men would be the withdrawers. But that seems to have shifted, and we're not exactly sure why. But in this audience, I noticed it was much more mixed. Some women say they're the pursuers, some men. Some women are the withdrawers, some men. So I think it's a cultural thing that has changed a little bit. Typically, men are more the withdrawers and women are more the pursuers, simply because of the way we seek intimacy.
But again, that varies from person to person and personality type to personality type. And some of your own background will influence this as well.
It also varies from topic to topic.
Yeah.
There are certain things where I want to pursue, I want to fix it and make it right. And there are other things where I want to withdraw. So sometimes it can vary depending on what you're talking about.
Some things you just want to fight about, don't you?
Oh, a little bit. Yeah, later.
All right. So that's avoidance and withdrawal. And now those are the four negatives. And if you can identify those in your own marriage, and you decide, you know what, we need to change this, we need to remove these from our marriage, and we're going to agree that we're going to do what is necessary in order to get rid of them, then you can find a successful and a happier marriage. Now, to kind of summarize what we've just said, we've got the areas of high conflict. Proverbs 29:11, a fool gives full vent to anger, but the wise quietly hold it back. And Proverbs 12:18, reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. So there are those areas of high conflict. Invalidation and escalation tend to be among those. Even negative interpretations tend to be high conflict areas, don't they? But then we also have avoidance. And the scripture says, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one body. In your anger do not sin, do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. So we've got high conflict with the first three, and then avoidance and withdrawal. The avoidance of problem solving is the other one. Two areas of high conflict.
And those are both real risk factors to oneness in your marriage.
Right.
Now we want to talk a little bit about solutions. We've talked briefly about solutions to each one as we went along, but we want to talk about a pattern that you can use to solve some of the problems in your marriage. Now, this pattern seems a little stilted possibly and unnatural, especially at first when you try to use it. But the key is that this really is not for deciding the basic things in life. You know, what are we going to have, peas or carrots for supper tonight? This is for when those things that you can't solve in an easy fashion. Things that maybe you have dealt with for years and you just can't get past them. And part of it is because you can't ever really talk about it. And our communication patterns get in the way.
And we don't listen very well. I had a couple in my office for counseling, and they were almost apologetic about being there. They said, you know, we've fought about this one issue every week for 13 years. 13 years, every week we have the same fight. We don't know why we're here because we know there's nothing you can do for us. You can't solve that. I said, well, perhaps not. Why don't you humor me? And I explained this method of problem solving. And it is a method where you learn to speak in short sentences. You learn to express one or two ideas while the other person learns to listen. And then you reverse roles, and then the listener becomes the speaker, and the speaker becomes the listener. And there's a very specific way how you state your ideas. So I had to coach them through this. It was her issue, so she started. And she said the first item or two, I had to coach her, stop her, and help her rephrase it so that she was speaking correctly, and then he had to reflect back what she was saying. And so we got 2 points out from her. Then we changed roles, and it was his turn. And the very first thing out of his mouth, she said, "What? I never knew that. Have you always felt that way?" Well, yeah. Well, that changes everything. And in that 1 5-minute session, we solved a problem that they've been fighting about for 13 years. They learned a skill. It felt stilted, it felt uncomfortable and awkward for them at first, but that's only because they had never used it. But as they began to use this, they began to realize that they had a real tool for problem solving. And to summarize it overall, it includes problem discussion, prayer, and problem solution. And this method is called the speaker-listener technique. The speaker-listener technique. It is a structured way to communicate safely and clearly when you really need to do it well. It's a structured way. So there are rules that we're going to abide by in order to make this happen. Rules for the structure. It eliminates the negative patterns of communication. James 1:19, but let everyone be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. The tendency, though, is that we don't listen very well to each other. When one is speaking, the other is thinking up their rebuttal rather than actually paying attention to what is being said. This technique, if you will use it, takes you out of that mode, and it forces you to actually listen to your partner. And by the way, there's nothing that's any more validating than that, to actually be heard, to have your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas heard and not trashed. And so that's a part of what this does.
It also makes it a safe place to be able to express your feelings. There are a lot of folks, especially if you live with an explosive kind of a person, that you don't ever feel safe to actually say what you mean or what you feel, because they'll take it as a criticism and they will attack you. So this makes a safe place because you've both agreed that you're going to abide by the rules and you're going to listen. So,
all right. We basically, very often we will provide a card for people to use with this. We didn't bring enough for you. Sorry, we only have one here. But it will look just like the little box that's on your note there. This looks like a piece of kitchen tile, and it's called the floor. Whoever holds this set of rules, the little card, is the person who has the floor. That means that that's the person who's speaking, all right? Now, if indeed we were to come together to settle an issue regarding calendars, since it was probably my issue at first that I felt that Gayle was ignoring my calendar, I would say, all right, we need a time to come together. We'll set the time within the next 24 hours, and then I would speak first. So I would have the floor first. Thank you. And then I would hold this as I make 1 or 2 points. I'm going to speak in short sentences. I'm going to speak for myself. In other words, speaking for myself means I cannot say, you always, you never, or we always have thought this, we always, no. I speak with I sentences. I feel this way. And I'm going to speak in a short pattern. The pattern is, Gayle, when you do X in Y situation, I feel Z. When you do X in Y, the situation, my feelings are Z. It makes sense? So when you do this in this situation, and basically it needs to be that short. It needs to be a short sentence. I speak one sentence, and when I speak the sentence, I wait. And then Gayle is the listener. Her job is to reflect what I've said. She does not say, well, that's stupid. She cannot rebut what I've said. She cannot argue, but she doesn't agree either. Her job is to tell me what it was I said, to reflect it, either word for word or to paraphrase it in such a way that I know for sure she got it. Now, she can ask a question of clarification. She can ask for an example. When would that happen? Or she can ask me to rephrase it. But when I've stated the question, the point, and she responds, then I know that she's got it, and I go on to the next point.
So you make one sentence, or at least, one or two sentences, no more than that, so that you're making just one single point, and you're stating it briefly. Mm-hmm. And then as he states it, my job is to reflect it back to him, so that I'm proving that I listened, and then I got what he said.
And again, that's not saying I agree with you. It's saying I hear you. I understand what you have said. I identify with that emotion. I understand it. And it doesn't say, you're right, I'm wrong. It simply says, I hear you. That's what we're saying here, all right? And I'm supposed to do this in short sentences. And I'm not supposed to go on. And after I've stated the sentence in that fashion, I pause for her to reflect. And when she does that, then we can go on. And the rules for both are the speaker has the floor, the speaker keeps the floor for a while the listener paraphrases, and then we share the floor. After I've made one or 2 points, then I share the floor, and then it's her turn. In fact, why don't we try that right now? Is that all right? Do you have anything to add before we start this?
I think that's good.
Okay, all right. Gayle, when you make an appointment for us without having checked my calendar, I feel as though you think my work and my calendar are unimportant.
So if I make an appointment and I don't check with you first, it feels to you like I don't value what you do.
That's right.
Think you're important in your work.
And when that happens, I think you think it feels to me as though you're saying that my work is unimportant and I'm not busy, so it doesn't really matter.
So when I make an appointment
mm-hmm.
that way, without talking to you, it makes you feel like you don't matter and your work doesn't matter.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
That's enough for right now. I'll think of more later.
Can I have the floor?
I don't know. I kind of like it. This is kind of... Well, okay.
All right. When you ask me to do something and make an appointment for us, and I go and do it, and then you're unhappy, I feel like, what's the point in even trying to do what you asked?
All right, so I've asked you to do something, and you do it, and then I'm unhappy. You feel like you've wasted your time, and it was foolish for you to try this.
Exactly.
Okay. So you understand where we go. We do this back and forth until we've made all of our points.
Now, this seems like a relatively small issue, making an appointment. But as you continue to talk, you see that there are underlying issues. It's not just about whether we're going to be at the youth group on Friday night. It's about, is what he is doing important? And do I matter in this whole thing? And can I ever please him?
Or am I respected? Those are the real issues. The issue is not so much the calendar as it is the underlying issue. Can she please me? Am I respected? That makes sense? So it's the underlying issue. And by the way, from my standpoint, the lack of respect was something that I experienced as a child. And transference means that sometimes I transfer that into this current relationship, and that's the hidden issue that she wasn't even aware of. That makes sense? So then all of a sudden she gets the full brunt of what came from my childhood, and she's thinking, wow, this is quite an overreaction, isn't it? I don't understand this. So we've got a conflict here. What's going on? So then she feels like she can't please me, and that makes her feel worse.
Well, and I'm a pleaser. I mean,
yeah.
I grew up trying to make everybody
Can't
happy.
we all just get along?
That's my mantra. Let's all just be happy.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, those are the hidden issues. So it's important that we look for those. Once we've expressed all of our opinions back and forth, and there's nothing more to say about the issue, then the next part of this whole process becomes brainstorming. And that's where you get a pencil, a piece of paper, and you write down every idea that comes to you, no matter how stupid it may sound. You write it down. Some of them are helpful, some of them are stupid. It doesn't really matter. All right. I guess one thing we could do is that we could specify certain dates before I ask you to talk to the youth group so that you would have something in mind.
Okay, so that's one idea.
That's one idea.
Let me write that down.
Okay.
I probably could just give you a quick call, and it would be another step in the process, but I could still give you a quick call and then call them back.
Verify the date. Yeah.
Let them
We
know.
could both quit work and lose our calendars and never have to do this again.
Let's put that one down
All right,
in
put
big
that down.
letters.
All right.
I like that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you understand, we're going to brainstorm till we put all the ideas down on a piece of paper. Then we'll go back and look at the ideas. We'll say, all right, this one, quitting work, although it's appealing, the bill collectors would be unhappy with us, so that's not going to work. So we can throw that one out, but a part of this one over here maybe we combine this with this one over here, and together we'll create a solution. You'll do this, I'll do this, and this is how we're going to solve the problem. Once you've got that, you write it down. You write down the solution, what she's going to do, what I'm going to do. You sign it and you date it. On this day, we've agreed that I will do this, you will do this. We sign it, and we've got a piece of paper now. We've just made a contract. Now, if this is something that happens frequently, we're going to set another appointment. And that next appointment is going to be in about 3 or 4 days. And at that appointment, we're simply going to ask, did we do what we said we would do, and is it working? And if it's not working, we're going to tweak it. We're going to make this thing, all right, let's go back to the brainstorming and see if we can tweak this so that we can fix it and make the solution perfect for us. If it happens infrequently, then we may do this a week from now or 2 weeks from now, but we're going to set another appointment and we're going to ask those questions. Did we do what we said we would do? Is it working, or do we need to fix it? That makes sense? This is a tool that, as we've said, can be of tremendous value to you. I have over and over again seen couples use the tool, even though it feels awkward to them, but it gives them the opportunity to solve issues without escalating, without invalidating, without negative interpretations. How can she interpret negative? She has to repeat almost word for word what I said, and without avoiding or withdrawing. We actually solve the issue. We come together. And something changes in our body language when we do this.
You know what happens, and once you have used the floor and you've gotten all the points back and forth and you get to the brainstorming part, it actually can turn into a joint effort at that point, because we start writing down things and we're thinking of things, and it's, there's even some funny ones we throw in there. And what happens is, whereas before, when I would look at the problem, all I could see is you. You must be the problem, because it's sitting right here between us. But when we get our points out and we go to brainstorming, suddenly we have put the problem out here, and it's something that we together are going to solve. The problem is not you. The problem is the problem. It's something other than us, but it's something that we will deal with together. And we become a team working on this thing out here. And it gives you much more objectivity about it. All right, we know what it is. What are we going to do about it? And we come up with a solution, and we're working on something together.
You, in your handout, have some exercises, and obviously some of you have a partner here to practice with and others don't. And so we probably won't give you any time here tonight to do that. But what we would like to do is just check and see if you have any questions about what we've presented this evening. And by the way, take the exercises home and practice there.